The familiar crinkle of Tupperware echoed through the open-plan office as I pulled my lunch container from my worn canvas bag. I could already feel the weight of expectant stares before I even lifted the lid. The aroma of last night's home-cooked chicken and vegetables wafted up, and right on cue, her voice cut through the afternoon quiet. "Oh, there's that distinctive homemade smell again," Patricia announced from her corner office, her voice carrying that particular tone that made everyone within earshot pause their typing. She emerged like a predator sensing weakness, her designer heels clicking against the polished concrete floor of our downtown Seattle marketing firm. "You know, Sarah, there's a fantastic new fusion place that just opened on Pine Street. Have you considered treating yourself once in a while?" Her smile was sharp, practiced. "Or is budgeting more of a personal challenge?" The break room fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. My coworkers suddenly found their phones fascinating, their sandwiches from the deli downstairs somehow requiring intense concentration. I felt the familiar heat creep up my neck, that mixture of embarrassment and rage that had become my daily companion for the past 8 months. "I actually prefer cooking," I managed, keeping my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. "It's healthier, and I enjoy it." Patricia's laugh was like glass breaking. "How quaint. Well, some of us value our time differently, I suppose." She gestured toward the window overlooking the bustling street below, where professionals in crisp suits hurried between gleaming restaurants and coffee shops. "Success has a look, Sarah, and sometimes you have to invest in the image before you can afford the lifestyle." 26 years old, fresh out of my marketing master's program, drowning in student loans, and earning just enough to cover my studio apartment in Capitol Hill and my monthly bus pass. Patricia wasn't wrong about one thing. I couldn't afford the $40 lunch habits of my colleagues. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every dollar I saved on overpriced salads and artisanal sandwiches was going somewhere else entirely. As Patricia returned to her glass-walled office, resuming her phone call about client campaigns I'd never be trusted to touch, I opened my container. The chicken was perfectly seasoned, the vegetables still vibrant. My grandmother's recipe, one of the few things I'd inherited along with her determination and her refusal to let anyone make her feel small. I ate slowly, deliberately, tasting not just the food, but the promise I'd made to myself 3 months ago, when I'd started waking up at 5 a.m. every morning. Patricia could have her audience, her daily theater of humiliation, but she had no idea she was watching someone who was already planning her exit strategy. The afternoon crawled by with the usual tedium of data entry and campaign analytics for clients I'd never meet. But beneath my calm exterior, my mind was racing through code functions and user interface designs, calculating server costs, and potential user acquisition rates. Tonight, like every night for the past 97 days, I'd trade this fluorescent-lit prison for my real workspace, the small desk wedged between my bed and kitchen counter, surrounded by monitors displaying the digital platform that was slowly, steadily changing my life. Chapter 2. The Silent Revolution. 4:45 a.m. The Seattle sky was still dark, punctuated only by the occasional delivery truck rumbling down Pine Street. While Patricia slept in her Queen Anne penthouse, I was already 3 hours into my real workday, fingers flying across the keyboard as lines of code transformed into something that could change everything. My app, Connect Local, was designed to bridge the gap between small businesses and neighborhood communities. While everyone was focused on global social networks, I'd identified something simpler but more powerful: the need for authentic local connections. Farmers markets, independent bookstores, family-owned restaurants, all struggling to compete with corporate chains, all needing a way to reach customers who actually cared about supporting local businesses. The irony wasn't lost on me. Every day, Patricia preached about understanding target demographics and authentic brand connection for clients who paid our firm 6 figures. Every day, I nodded and smiled while secretly building something that actually embodied those principles. The key to success, Patricia had announced during yesterday's team meeting, gesturing at a PowerPoint slide filled with corporate buzzwords, is understanding your market intimately. You have to be willing to sacrifice short-term comfort for long-term vision. She had no idea how right she was. By November, Connect Local had its first 100 users. By January, we'd hit 1,000. Local business owners were connecting with customers in ways that felt genuine, personal. The app was generating modest revenue through premium features for businesses, and more importantly, it was growing organically. Users telling their friends, business owners recommending it to other entrepreneurs. But my days at the marketing firm continued their predictable rhythm. Every lunch hour brought the same ritual humiliation. "Still with the brown bag special, I see," Patricia would announce, often timing her comments for maximum audience impact. You know, networking happens over meals, Sarah. Some investments in yourself are worth making. My coworkers had learned to expect the show. Some looked uncomfortable, shooting me sympathetic glances. Others seemed to enjoy the spectacle, grateful it wasn't them in Patricia's crosshairs. I learned to eat quickly, efficiently, using the remaining time to step outside and take calls with potential business partners, developers, and the small but growing community of users who were starting to see Connect Local as more than just an app. The user engagement metrics are incredible, my developer, Marcus, told me during one of our evening video calls. He was based in Portland, a freelancer I'd found through an online forum, someone who understood the vision and was willing to work for equity until the revenue stream stabilized. We're seeing daily active users at 37%, which is higher than most social platforms in their first year. The numbers were promising, but the real validation came from the stories. Maria, who owned a small bakery in Fremont, had doubled her weekend sales after connecting with customers who learned about her weekend-only specialty pastries through the app. David, who ran a used bookstore in Ballard, had created a community around monthly reading groups that now had a waiting list. These were real people, real businesses, real impact. While Patricia focused on helping massive corporations appear more relatable, I was actually creating relatability, building authentic connections between neighbors who shared values and priorities. The platform required constant attention, responding to user feedback, coordinating with Marcus on new features, managing the growing database of local businesses. My evenings disappeared into optimization and planning. My weekends became coding marathons. But every milestone, every positive user review, every new business that joined the platform felt like validation, not just of the app, but of the choice to endure Patricia's daily cruelty in service of something bigger. By March, we'd launched in Portland and San Francisco. By June, Connect Local was generating enough revenue for me to pay Marcus a proper salary and start setting aside money for my own transition. The app had become profitable, sustainable, and more importantly, it had proven the concept could work at scale. I never brought my victories to work, never hinted at the 12-hour days or the growing bank account or the phone calls from potential investors. Instead, I continued showing up with my homemade lunches, enduring Patricia's commentary, playing the role of the struggling recent graduate who couldn't afford better. Because I'd learned something valuable about power. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving your critics wrong immediately. Sometimes it's letting them reveal exactly who they are while you quietly become exactly who you're meant to be. Chapter 3. The Quiet Exit. Effective immediately. The words felt strange in my mouth as I handed Patricia the crisp white envelope containing my resignation letter. 2 years, 4 months, and 18 days after I'd started at Morrison & Associates, I was finally walking away. Patricia looked up from her laptop with that familiar expression of mild irritation she reserved for interruptions. The corner office that had once intimidated me now seemed small, cramped even. The view of downtown Seattle that she was so proud of paled in comparison to the panoramic windows of the WeWork space I'd just signed a lease for in South Lake Union. Resignation? She tore open the envelope with manicured nails, her eyes scanning the formal language I'd crafted carefully. 2 weeks' notice, gratitude for opportunities, standard professional courtesy. This is rather sudden, Sarah. I wasn't aware you were interviewing elsewhere. It's a career change, I said simply, maintaining the calm demeanor that had carried me through 26 months of lunchtime humiliations. I'm starting my own business. The laugh came immediately, that sharp sound I'd heard echoing off the break room walls so many times. Your own business? Doing what, exactly? Her tone carried that familiar condescension, the assumption that someone who brought Tupperware to work couldn't possibly have real entrepreneurial ambitions. Digital platform development, community building. I kept my answers vague, professional. There was no point in elaborating. Patricia would learn the details soon enough, though not from me. Well, she set the letter down with deliberate precision. I have to say, I'm surprised. Starting a business requires significant capital, connections, a certain level of sophistication about market dynamics. Her pause was calculated, designed to sting. Are you sure you've thought this through? The failure rate for startups is extraordinarily high, especially for someone without relevant experience. I nodded, letting her words wash over me like water off glass. I appreciate your concern. I've done my research. What I didn't mention was that Connect Local was no longer a startup in any traditional sense. We'd just closed a Series A funding round for $2.3 million. The app was active in 12 cities, with over 50,000 users and 1,500 participating businesses. 3 employees worked full-time on development and community management, operating out of the office space I'd secured in the heart of Seattle's tech corridor. The transition had been methodical, planned down to the last detail. Marcus had moved to Seattle to serve as CTO. We'd hired Elena, a brilliant UX designer who'd previously worked at Uber, and James, whose background in small business development made him perfect for our merchant relations team. The company had structure, direction, and most importantly, sustainable growth. Well, Patricia continued, clearly expecting more drama, more explanation, more opportunity to dissect my decision. I suppose we'll need to start the replacement process immediately, though finding someone willing to work at your salary level might take time. Of course, I'll make sure all my current projects are properly documented for whoever takes over. I kept my voice neutral, professional. The irony was perfect. Patricia had no idea that my salary level represented less than what Connect Local now generated in a typical week. My last 2 weeks passed unremarkably. I completed campaign analyses, updated spreadsheets, attended meetings where Patricia continued to dispense wisdom about market strategy and customer connection. My coworkers seemed puzzled by my departure, some expressing concern about my entrepreneurial leap, others offering polite encouragement. On my final day, there was no fanfare, no goodbye party, no speech from Patricia about my contributions. I packed my desk supplies into the same canvas bag that had carried so many homemade lunches, said quiet goodbyes to the colleagues who'd been kind, and walked out of Morrison & Associates forever. The elevator ride down felt symbolic, each floor marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. When the doors opened onto the marble lobby, I stepped out not as the budget-conscious recent graduate who'd endured daily humiliation, but as the CEO of a company that was about to redefine how communities connected with local businesses. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. The TechCrunch interview is confirmed for Thursday. They want to discuss the expansion into Austin and Denver. I smiled, sliding the phone back into my pocket as I walked out into the Seattle afternoon. Tomorrow, I'd start a new routine. Team meetings in a conference room with a view of Elliott Bay, strategy sessions with investors, planning sessions for features that would help thousands of small businesses thrive. But today, I had one last thing to do. I stopped at my favorite food truck, the one run by a Korean family who joined Connect Local during our pilot phase. Their bulgogi bowls had become locally famous after our users started sharing photos and reviews. The usual? Asked Mrs. Kim, already reaching for a container. Actually, I said, make it 2. I'm celebrating. As I walked toward my car, carrying lunch that cost more than my old homemade meals, but tasted like freedom, I realized Patricia had been right about one thing. Success does have a look. It just wasn't the look she'd expected.